All right, welcome to episode 6. No, not 6. Episode 7
So,
of Core Setting. We're back. We were gone for a little bit for some personal reasons, and then I had a little bit of a bug, still do. But we're back to talk about some Star Trek Picard. So, how you doing this morning, Bill?
I'm doing okay. Happy to be back on course heading, talking about Picard.
Yep.
Um, and we have a few episodes to talk about today. Because, like you said, we were away for a little bit. Um, we have 7, 8, and somewhat 9. We're going to do a little bit of.
Yep.
Um, we're going to save some of that discussion for next week once we have the full
And we can talk about why.
2-part, but
Yeah.
we'll get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I guess we'll jump right into it, which is what we usually do on
Yes,
course
let's
setting,
do
right?
it. Yes.
No housekeeping, no intro stuff.
Other than this is heavy spoilers, obviously, but
Heavy
if
spoilers.
you're not caught up, then go catch up, come back,
I don't know
watch it
what
after
to
the
say
fact. So,
at this point.
yeah.
Because we're talking about episodes a few weeks old, you should be caught up.
Yes. Yep.
But let's go right into Nepenthe, which is where we sort of left off. We have Adam and Rob in the chat. Greetings to you both. Thank you for stopping by. We haven't, like you said, you had some personal stuff you were dealing with.
Yep.
It's been super busy everywhere because of obviously what's going on in the world today. So I haven't heard a whole lot from you about like specific how'd you feel about these episodes. So I'm really eager to talk to you. Some of my thoughts are a little bit more out there, especially when it comes to Nepenthe.
Yeah.
I tweeted some stuff.
Some very controversial stuff. Okay, I'll say I'll start with this. It was a very strong episode. I think it's the strongest Picard episode. I wouldn't go as far as to say, did I watch the best Star Trek episode ever? But it was very strong. I think combined with the personal and the feelings of Riker and Troy coming back, but mixed with just like a fun story. It's so crazy to me that literally the episode is just them coming and having dinner with them. It's just
pretty much
so simple but so great, and it has really classic Star Trek tropes in it that we can kind of talk about a little bit later. But overall, I love that episode. I think it's my favorite so far.
Yeah, it's definitely my favorite Picard episode. Obviously, I made a bold statement, like you said. I think I said something like that. I just watched my favorite episode of Star Trek in 25 years.
Yes,
which goes back pretty far into like 90s era Trek, obviously. So that's certainly that's a measure of my initial reaction, perhaps more than what my more objective feelings will be as time goes on. But it's all a way of saying I really, really loved it. I think it obviously hit all the emotional feels, kinds of notes with the nostalgia of bringing old characters back and having those characters played so well and written so well. But I think it served the story well. Like you said, first of all, the sort of break in the breakneck pace of this season, was nice. But I also feel like it was kind of essential. I feel like Picard, coming off of the experience of being on the Borg cube, and sort of all the trauma that came along with that, and the sort of overwhelming nature of all of this happening, needed Riker and Troy. He needed the healing nature of that planet without knowing it, the same way that Riker and Troy did when they went there. So clearly Picard chose his destination for a reason. He I believe obviously knew Riker and Troy were there. I think he needed their counsel, he needed their support, and I think the episode serves as a it's Picard kind of re-energizing himself and getting ready to do what he needs to do and kind of recentering himself. And I feel like as that episode goes on, and even in the episodes since, he's more familiarly Picard from TNG. I think his interactions with Riker and Troy recenter him, I guess is the best way I could put it. Yeah. There are scenes there's a great scene in Nepenthe where he's talking to Troy after Picard makes kind of a, I don't want to call it like rude, but kind of a insensitive comment to Soji at a time where she's really doubting herself and doesn't, have a grasp on her own reality. and Troy kind of takes him to task the way that she would occasionally do in TNG, and explains it from Soji's point of view and talks to Picard about what he needs to do moving forward. Um, that I think serves an important purpose beyond just being nostalgic and being fan servicey for the series, for the season. So I think it goes hand in hand, which is why I loved it so much. It does all the things that are fan servicey. It makes you feel good to see these characters again, played so well, written so well. But it also, I think, moves the story of the season along and moves the characters along in an important way.
Yeah, but it was really well balanced, right? There was some fan service stuff also with some interactions and stuff, but it was really focused on what was going on with Picard, and it was almost like a regrouping episode before we start
the rush to the end.
Yeah, the rush to the end. So I think it was a perfect episode, and I think the placement was perfect as well. So as far as
I agree with
in
that.
the season.
Yeah, and I think did you feel the same way that both Marina Sirtis and Jonathan Frakes are perfect? Like they for people like kind of like Patrick Stewart's obviously been doing this whole season, picking up these characters that they haven't played in 25 years, 24 years, whatever it's been. Maybe a little less than that, 18, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Many years since they've done it. I think they both hit their stride really, really quickly. I think Sirtis in particular was really, really great. I'm hard pressed to find scenes with Troy as strong as a couple of them are here.
Mm-hmm. No, there was no loss. I think that they still felt right at home in those characters as far as the acting goes. So I would agree with you.
Yeah. I think both of them really hit their stride. The biggest surprise to me, that's not a huge surprise to see Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis do well.
Yeah.
Playing, Troy. They know what they're doing, and I'm sure it's like putting on an old pair of shoes and riding a bike. Mm-hmm. They delivered the goods. Their chemistry with Patrick Stewart is beyond reproach. You can't even question it. They're perfect the minute they're on screen together. Mm-hmm. But the real surprise to me with that storyline is the really, really strong casting of their daughter, Kestra. Mm-hmm. I think when you talk about like child performances, I think she's really good in a role that's not, I'm sure, that easy to play. She's a smart kid. She's mm-hmm. kind of operating on a similar level with these adults. Like she's smart. She's capable. She knows what she's talking about. She's resourceful. And see TNG season 1 for an example of how to write a young person who's trying to do that, operate on the same level as adults for a not so good example. Like the TNG writers struggled with Wesley Crusher doing those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But she, I think, partially, I'm sure, due to the writing, but also I think the actress is really, really strong. And brings a lot to the table in this episode with her relationship with Soji. I think she does a lot to kind of unlock Soji for Picard. She does a lot of the heavy lifting to bring her along for the rest of the season. Yeah. Adam asks, did we see the shirt that she was wearing? It's Sex Pistols in Klingon. I mean, there's all kinds of cool stuff like that in her bedroom, in the production design that really do a lot to lend a lot of character, a lot of texture to this character that we may only see once, or maybe again in the future, but we're not going to see a whole lot of over the course of this show. I'm assuming it does a lot to kind of build her character through the production design and the costume design, and the actor obviously does a lot too. But it's a full effort to bring that character to life, and things like that costume and the stuff in her room, I think, do a whole lot for that too. Rob mentions Riker putting the shields up around their home. That's a really cool, neat little
take
touch.
Riker out of Starfleet, but you can't take Starfleet out of Riker.
True. Yep. He's still, and like Rob says later, he is. It's something I didn't expect in seeing all of these. I had just assumed he was retired, kind of like Picard, left behind by Starfleet. But he's on reserve service. And makes a point to say later in the episode that maybe he would come back for something big or something worthwhile. It would have to be a big deal. Mm-hmm. I suspect something big will bring him back maybe next week, but we'll talk about that, I'm sure. I think we'll see more of him But I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that little piece of character that might pay off later for him. What else when it comes to Picard, Riker, Troy, that part of the episode? Any standout scenes for you? Anything that really, really stands out beyond?
I mean, it's just the scene in the garden isn't really necessarily with Picard, but with Troy, you still feel that emotional connection. Like she still has that, you know, empathy that she can just talk to any crewman or anyone and kind of draw that out and kind of explain it. It's just unbelievable that it's been so long that they could still do something like that. So it's cool. It's cool to see.
Yeah, that's a great scene where she's talking to Soji. She's doing her counseling. You can that's the exact kind of scene that would be happening in Troy's office in TNG.
Yeah.
The writing is really well done to kind of keep that continuity, and she has the same approach, the same skill set in trying to unlock information and get somebody to open up. I think that's all great. I love the dinner table, like when they're actually eating dinner, and they're kind of talking. To me, that's like an observation lounge scene from TNG. You know, they're all kind of going around the table sharing information. And Picard at one point turns to them and says thoughts, like it's right out of a ready room or an observation lounge scene. Little touches like that, and that's the kind of stuff to me. Like that's very intentional. I feel like I think these are all little ticks telling us that he's finding himself a little bit. He's kind of getting on track. He's realizing that he has to be that old Picard a little bit to get through this. I think it means something for the overall season beyond just kind of tickling us and giving us good feeling.
Because I think in this episode he does feel a little bit overwhelmed, right? He says, I had a crew, I had a ship, I had a plane, I had all these things. And now I don't have any of those. So I think he needed this a little bit reassured, come back to the committee and kind of work through it. But
and I think he realizes over the course of this, talking to Riker, Troy, realizing that I think being with them probably makes him realize that nothing he did on the Enterprise he did alone. Like those things were not done by him in a ragtag. He needed help. He needed support. He needed capable people who knew what they were doing to pull together in the right direction to get those things done. And I think he comes out of this episode and realizes he needs to go back to Starfleet. He needs to get Starfleet on board. Yeah. And we see that in the next episode that we'll talk about in a couple minutes here. But I think that experience with Riker and Troy makes him. I think the nostalgia of it for him serves a purpose. It makes him realize what he needs to do to succeed. I think he's come to the point where he's realizing that what he's been trying to do, this way he's trying to conduct this mission, is not going to work. This ragtag crew on one ship trying to do this big thing. It's beyond the capability of what he's got at his disposal. So she's doing the data head tilt. Rob says when she comes out of the house, that thing, and that to me, that's another great scene where Riker kind of analyzes he pieces it together. He knows exactly what's going on by the few signs that he has in front of him. Realizing that she's probably an android. The only thing that would probably pull Picard back is something that has to do with data. They're being able to figure out it's the Romulans because of the cloak. And Tal Shiar, like his ability to analyze the problem and piece together the exact thing Picard's dealing with. Is perfectly in keeping with somebody as capable and experienced as a Riker. But somebody who knows Picard as well as Riker does. To know how he's reacting to things, that tells him kind of what he's dealing with. So the episode's loaded with scenes like that. There's been a ton of content out there. Going to task with this episode, piecing together and analyzing all these scenes, and all of it I pretty much I loved. Everything involving those three characters together was spot on for me. I was most assured by the way that they were written. I think that they were just like I shouldn't have been surprised. I think the way they've handled Picard, the way they handled Seven a few weeks ago when they brought her back for the first time, I feel like they did a really nice job of finding a groove with, having presenting a character where clearly things have happened in their life and they're at a different point in life, but it's clearly the same person. It's not a reimagining of that character. It's not a different version of that character. It's an evolved naturally, 20 years later, time has passed, life has changed. Look at these people, which I think is the best possible approach. Obviously one thing we haven't really talked about is the reveal that, not only is it's a big deal to find out Riker and Troy have a daughter who's alive and well and, a very capable person, but they had a son who had this ailment, which kind of forced them out of Starfleet to kind of go reserve and deal with, a sick son who doesn't make it. So they lost a child, which they kind of carry as obviously that's a huge deal for anybody to lose a child. So this is a big thing for Riker and Troy, and you see it all over their performances. I think both of them, they're both carrying around a lot of grief and a lot
of baggage for sure.
A lot of baggage. Yeah. And I think that adds a lot of color and texture to their performances. That brings a lot that they can play, and it tells us a lot about what's happened to them over the 20 years since we've seen them in Nemesis. So did that?
I think that worked. I think it worked because we've really never seen this side of some of these characters, right? Because we've seen like this, the Starfleet strength, and they can. It's similar with Picard. You can hide behind the uniform, you can hide behind Starfleet, you can hide behind this big flagships. But when it comes down to it, can you still, 20 years later, be able to stand up to and do the right thing? But yeah, I think
it's true.
All these characters have baggages, right? All these, like
all of them,
everyone we see, the cast, Ralphie. It's just all of them have some sort of baggage. So
yeah, and to me that feels perfectly in line with even in Star Trek as a whole. Obviously, this is a show that is clearly aimed at like current times, and the feeling that the arc of history is kind of getting away from you and not being satisfied with the direction of things and being left behind by that. But to me, it kind of goes hand in hand with, if you look at the characters in TNG, they're all orphaned. Like they're all people with broken, they're all orphans of some kind, with issues with parents or families back home. So Star Trek's very comfortable with and has had a history of kind of pulling characters together that have similar kinds of backstories like this. And like I said, they're all orphan kind of people, and in this show, they're all, carrying a lot of recent baggage, caused by the direction of things. Even Riker and Troy, they're affected by that synthetic ban, the disease that Thad Riker, that is canon now, as Ian says. That disease that he battled and lost to could have been treated if that synthetic ban didn't happen, if the continued development of that positronic technology could have continued. There may have been a way to handle that. So they're yet again kind of like Rafi and Picard and Rios and Girardi. These are all people who are struggling as a result of where Starfleet is.
I mean, just because a lot of people I've seen people talk about on Twitter and then on podcasts is how negative and how like bad it seems, in the future, and how bad Starfleet is. You got to think about what's transpired. You've got the Borg stuff, you got the Dominion stuff, you got the synthetic stuff. This is all really close together. It's like,
naturally there's going to be
some. It's frustrating a little bit because it's not always sunshine and rainbows, and I think
and that's why I don't have a problem buying the sort of state of things with Starfleet. I can believe, first of all, like I've said a couple times in these conversations, there are countless examples in Star Trek's history of admirals, Starfleet officials, Federation presidents making controversial decisions that don't necessarily jive with the Roddenberry view of the future. That's
Yeah.
not new, and that goes not just in TOS. It goes well into the 24th century stuff. Insurrection is clearly the entire plot of that movie is dependent on Starfleet and the Federation making a decision that doesn't jive with the Roddenberry vision of the future.
Yeah.
So we've done this before, but what you just said about, we're coming off of, this is 20 years post Dominion War. This is after numerous, interactions with the Borg that have not gone well. There's a bill to pay, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, Starfleet and the Federation, I don't, I'm not justifying their decisions, and I certainly don't agree with the direction that they've kind of gone in. But you take those things, you put on the back end of it this attack on Mars,
Yeah.
And that's so
stuff.
close to home.
Yeah.
I think it's not surprising that, given what we know about Starfleet and the Federation, that some bad decisions could be made, and some people with not necessarily the most Roddenberry outlook would rise to power and point things in the direction we'd like to see it go. I think it's perfectly believable and perfectly in line with what we've gotten in Star Trek for the last 50 some years.
Mm-hmm.
So none of that bothers me. That's not a problem for me at all. But kind of a tangent, but a good one, because I think it's core to the show. I think it's just such a big thing that people talk about with Picard, and it's a thing that people are kind of grappling with.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of where we are on it. That's where I am on it, at least. A couple other things. We can go back to the Picard, Riker, Troy, Kestra, Soji stuff. But the other kind of two parallel storylines that we have in this episode are Elnor and Hugh.
Mm.
The demise of Hugh, spoiler,
yeah,
is a big controversial thing in this episode that I think knocks it down a few pegs for some people, as I've seen on Twitter. Some people found that sudden and abrupt and maybe not earned. But we have them on the cube dealing with what's left of the Romulan, crew, the Zatvash, folks. And then on top of that, we have the La Serena crew trying to get to Picard, being tracked by that Romulan snakehead ship with Narek.
Yeah.
Rio suspecting there's a mole on the ship. He thinks it's Rafi. Girardi knows it's her.
Yeah.
And Girardi takes some desperate measures to try to stop it. So we have those two storylines kind of going parallel with the bigger, Picard, Riker, Troy stuff on Nepenthe. Which one of those two did you find more interesting? Which one do you have more to say about, I guess? You have strong feelings about
both pretty equal.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I just think they were just there to kind of, keep those storylines going a little bit. Hugh's death was a little bit tough for me. I get why people say that doesn't really sit well with them. It doesn't really sit well with me. Death in Trek is always tough, right?
Right.
So, we can talk about that, but
it's a little quick, and it's a little out of nowhere.
Yeah,
it's a little
out of left field. But
like he sticks his head out to look, and
yeah,
bam, he's gone. Like that's, and we've talked many times about the way they handle Tasha Yar, and that's kind of similar. It's very quick, sudden, out of nowhere, blink and you're gone, kind of thing. That's been done before, but for some reason this one did feel a little bit, little sudden.
I feel like I don't want to say it's such a I would say a beloved character, but I feel like any character that's from the old quote unquote old days is beloved. So,
right.
A little bit more dramatic maybe. I don't know. It's very sudden.
Yeah.
I think it maybe raises the stakes a little bit. Maybe that's what they're trying to go for. Raise the stakes of the deadliness of the Shadvash, but I don't know.
Well, it sets into motion some of the stuff we're going to be talking about in a couple minutes with Broken Pieces, with another even more beloved character returning and having to get down and dirty with the Borg again. I don't think they can get to that if they want to do that without necessarily taking Hugh out of the picture as easily, I guess. That's what I'm sure is the justification for it. But yeah, Hugh had earned a drawn out glorious death scene. He did. He kind of even had like he's laying there and gets some dialogue with his last breaths to Eleanor, and he has a little bit of a dramatic death scene, but it's very quick and it's very out of nowhere, and I was certainly surprised that it happened that way. I didn't necessarily think Hugh was safe. I didn't know that. I didn't have a strong feel for him surviving the season, and something told me something was gonna happen to him, but I didn't expect it to happen that way and that quickly. As far as the La Serena stuff, I thought I actually kind of liked the Narek in the Snakehead ship, kind of tailing the ship. I've seen some criticize, the view, like Narek's ship is kind of like right behind La Serena, and the dialogue would kind of imply that they're kind of like just out of range. That doesn't bother me so much. I feel like we've seen many times in Star Trek ships use magnification to be looking closer than what they are. They can rationalize. Yeah, exactly. Sort of sensor ghost that makes it look. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to technobabble your way out of that. That doesn't bother me, and I don't care that they didn't offer me some sort of technobabble background for why he appears close. That didn't bother me, but I liked the La Serena crew kind of doubting each other. I liked Rios trying to piece it together. I think that adds up. As a former Starfleet officer, he would be trying to figure it out. Yeah. Like not just kind of taking it at face value. Clearly something's up here.
Yeah.
There's no way this guy could be tracking us like this without
somebody
here helping, whether willingly or not. And his suspicion of Raffi kind of makes sense given what Raffi had done and her background and her time away from the ship. So I liked all that. It's certainly not as memorable, and it's much more of like a connecting the dots, getting us from here to there, kind of a plot line than the Picard Data, Picard Riker, Troy stuff. But I think it serves its purpose, and I don't feel like the episode needs to like move on when it jumps to these storylines necessarily. Any other thoughts on this one?
I don't think so. I think I've made the points I want to make. If you want to jump into next episode 8.
Yeah. Broken Pieces. Very different episode. Both of these are very talky. Very dialogue driven. But this one's much more cold, much more Nepenthe. When I think of Nepenthe from now forever, I'm automatically going to go to like warm colors, planet side.
This one's kind of the
bright earth colors. This one's much more. Yes. It's all ship based. It's dark, but it's equally driven by the character interactions and dialogue.
Yeah.
There's a lot of backstory for the Zhat Vash here. It starts off with that flashback of the Zhat Vash doing their thing with the admonition, their vision of the future that makes them so paranoid about synthetic life. We find out O is a half Romulan, half Vulcan.
Yep, there's her answer.
Infiltrated.
That's why she's wearing sunglasses.
Yep, she's not a full Vulcan.
Nope.
She's a half Vulcan, half Romulan who's infiltrated Starfleet's ranks and has moved to the top of Starfleet security, which the Romulans have tried to do before. The whole idea with Shinzon and Star Trek Nemesis was that they were going to clone Picard and replace him with an agent. Something that I think Starfleet has, and they did it with in Data's day. That ambassador that everybody thought was a Vulcan, was a Romulan spy. This is very much in the playbook of the Romulans. No, this is what they do. To me, the two things that stand out here, that my two, when I think of this episode, what comes to mind are what Rob just mentioned here: Seven reassimilated into the Borg Queen, using the Borg voice, talking about just hearing Jerry Ryan talk about Borg stuff is enough for me.
Yeah.
Just hearing that dialogue come out of her mouth, the same way, with the same inflections, the exact same. That works for me. I'm an easy sell for that stuff.
But
Um,
just to, I
Good.
don't know, I love that kind of dialogue with herself. You know, they might not want to be, you know,
Yeah, brought
they want
back again.
brought back again. I
I
might
might not
not
want to
want to be.
either.
That was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, that was so cool to see. Like
Mhm.
um, uh, even now, like so many years later, they've been, um, it's cool to see that it really doesn't go away, right? It's always there.
Right.
It's always something they're working through. So that was
Hmm.
really cool to see. I love that inner dialogue. Talking about the XBs, but then her too. It's the same thing. That was really cool to see. I think that's one of my favorite parts of the episode as well. Is that dialogue that she has.
Yeah, agreed. The disgust with which she says assimilate them, like at
Yeah.
Eleanor's suggestion. She's like, really, like they're not going to want to come back. Like you said, I love that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to want to come back. I think she remembers the struggle of the gift.
Yeah.
Like the stuff you see her go through in that episode, she remembers it
Yeah.
as clearly as anybody, obviously. So, um, I think the fear of not wanting to go through that again
Mm-hmm.
is real.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I love everything involving her in this episode. I think she's fantastic. I like her better in this episode than I do in Stardust City Rag. I think this is more
I think so
even
too.
like to the core of Seven
Of
of
Seven
Nine,
of
like to
Nine,
the core of
yes, yes,
her
very much
character.
so.
Like this is her worst nightmare. She's going through the same shit the same stuff that the Picard went through on in a couple episodes. Hospital box, like being put back in this position,
Yeah.
uh, and having to like face your fear and um, kind of the nightmare scenario.
Mm-hmm.
But she does it, and that's the other thing. Hearing her say "We are Borg," like
It's
with the
just
Borg
like, oh,
voice, it's like, man.
yes.
And there's some really cool sound work, really cool sound effects as the Borg drones are being ejected into space. Like there's this as the camera, like the visual effect, kind of like the camera moves like up the Borg cube, watching bodies just pour out into space.
Mm-hmm.
The sound of that is really really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Cool visual effects. Yeah, love that stuff. And as I think we mentioned, I think we mentioned it on Trek Live last week. There's a video that kind of um,
Oh,
enhances the scene that I think is maybe the
another
scene of
scene
the
that's
series.
so powerful. Not
Yeah.
just the Brie edit, but that scene in general with Soji and Picard. Oh my gosh, that was
Yes. Mhm.
quietly powerful. Like there was not a lot said, but there was a
Mhm.
lot said. If you kind of know what
Yeah, yeah. It's minimal. It's not. It's not. Um, it's 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 perfectly like Data and Picard. Like I
Picard's
love
really.
Picard's connection with like Soji asks Picard, did you love him? And he says, in my own way. And then he says, I guess Data and I had that in common, like struggling with kind of expressing
It
emotion
makes me want to tear up right
and
now.
coming out. Like, I know
God.
it's so perfect. And it's not even something I had ever really thought of, like thinking of that as like a commonality between Picard and Data, but it's so there. It's so there, obviously, through the whole show that
Yeah.
Picard struggles with those same things
Mm-hmm.
that Data does. So it was like finding new ground to explore the relationship of these two characters all this time later, after one of them is gone. That to me, that's the scene of the series for my money to this point. It's the scene that is capitalized, and I remember talking about that in right after the pilot. You know, I remember thinking, watching Dodge at the time in the first episode, so anxiously want to get to Picard as she's kind of activating and some of the Data stuff is turning on in her post-traumatic brain.
Yeah.
The draw to Picard as like a daughter, like somebody like for protection. What that tells us about how Data felt about Picard. If we could get an insight into how Data, without being able to express it, felt in quotes about Picard and the crew, that to me like justifies this series' existence. Like that's such a perfect expansion of the TNG stuff that I'm eager for. And this episode kind of delivers on that. That conversation moves what I was talking about there after Remembrance forward. Yeah, that makes this episode, that elevates it quite a bit. Just that scene alone for my money. Yeah. We have. Rob saying, talking about the Borg stuff. He's not a vengeful person, but he wanted Seven and the XBs to get revenge on Narissa too. Yes, I agree with that. Ian wanted to see Narissa get assimilated by the Borg. Almost, but no cigar. It looked like at the end of that episode.
Yeah.
They almost got her. But yeah, it's this episode does a lot for Rios as well. This is where we see each of the 5 holograms all kind of used to.
The acting range, I feel like.
Yes.
Oh, man, it's even with Discovery too. We've seen the range too, but this, I think they just keep upping the ante. Like, how many more characters can we put this one character or one actor through? I thought the range was really fun, and the Lassie too. That was kind of a fun little Easter egg. But
the engineer with the Scottish.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. I really liked that actor Santiago Cabrera, and it's I don't know why, but like coming into the show, I didn't know what to expect from that character. They didn't reveal much. So coming in, I didn't have much. Like, I knew more about Alison Pill because I'd seen her in other things playing Jurati.
Yeah.
Even Michelle Hurd, I had seen her before. These are actors I was familiar with. Not so much with Santiago Cabrera, and who knew that he was going to be playing not just one character but like 6 with 5 other holograms. Yeah. And so he's got one of the tougher jobs on the show, and in this episode, this is his kind of real showcase, I think, where he's
But we get some backstory too. He finally
very much so. That's what I mean.
After,
Rafi kind of unlocks him and figures it out using the hologram. It comes together that I guess these holograms are kind of taken from his personality to some extent, and they each have like different elements of him in them. So Rafi has to use all of them to kind of piece together as much as she can, and then she's able to
I think
get
that's what she's best at, right? Because she's always like, her backstory is all these conspiracy theories, kind of tying all these loose ends together to kind of make sure what the narrative is, which is exactly what she's doing, right? She gets a few tidbits from each. It's great.
And she extrapolates into all that into a narrative, like you said. She can fill the gaps herself and make it logically make sense.
Yeah.
It fits into what her background is and what she's been doing the whole time on the show, but she's using it to try to help. To try to get into a position to help Rios. But I love his backstory. I love finding out more about his time on that other ship and his relationship with the other captain, Vandermeer. And I like the way it expands on the relationship. We still don't know a whole lot about like their real backstory, like going back years, like and all that, but it tells us a lot about their relationship and how close they are, and that there's a degree of trust. You get the sense that they've had drinks together, like they've hung out, like there's a real connection there that has built over time, probably with some shared commiserating over the state of Starfleet and being left behind by these effed up positions that they're putting people in. So I like the expansion on Rios a lot. This is a really strong. How'd you feel about the episode as a whole? Like, we kind of talked about Nepenthe as like a, as a great. But
I think just because it's on the heels of the previous episode, I think it's pretty underrated. I think it's really strong. I think it's really
strong.
When I think overall, I try to look at each A plot, B plot, C plot, all these things. I think they're really strong. I never found myself like, if I was in one thing, I would want to be. I wouldn't say to myself, "Man, I just want to get back to the Borg cube. I just want to get back to the ship." It's just I thoroughly enjoyed a really strong, consistent episode.
Right. Yeah, I think that this episode doesn't really dip for me at all. Like even Picard dealing with, there's that great scene where she wakes up and Picard's like standing over her, and you're going to turn yourself in at Starbase 12 or Deep Space 12. Trying to figure out what the heck, like what happened.
There's the Stern Picard.
To me, that felt Stern Picard. Yeah. Yep, we see it every once in a while in TNG when it comes. You can tell when he's not effing around.
Yeah.
and he's in that mode there. Yeah, this is a really consistent episode for me. I like all of the storylines, exploration of the different characters. I like the crew kind of coming together. Everybody, minus Elnor, who's off on his own with Seven.
Yeah.
But everybody kind of getting on the same page and trying to talk through the problem. I love it. Towards the end of the episode, Picard has that great little monologue about standing in front of the view screen, remembering standing watch on the night watch on the USS Reliant as an ensign, and love it, and realizing how much he loved it, even like now, like all the love of it coming back to him. That's a really nice little touch. I'm always down for Picard talking about the past, his career, things like that. I'm always into that. So yeah, this one to me, I think this last run of 3, before the episode 9, which we haven't really talked about yet, the Impossible Box and the Nepenthe and Broken Pieces. To me, that run of 3 is as strong as I think any run of
3 in the series.
This new Trek
or new Trek.
Even I don't know that even Discovery 3 in a row that's quite that strong for me. Like really bang 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 right in a row. That's really really strong. And they're all different. I think they each have their own. I think they're all pretty distinctive. The Impossible Box really focusing on Picard's trauma with the Borg and going back to the cube. Nepenthe obviously has its own vibe, and then Broken Pieces is its own animal too. I think they're pretty independent episodes that work fairly well as standalones, as much as a standalone episode can work in a show like this. But I think they're all really really strong.
We are getting down.
Ian's asking.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Ian. Just asking if it's possible they got to her before she beamed out, and Arissa at the end, or kind of like. I guess we don't know. We haven't seen her since that. She wasn't in the episode we haven't talked about yet. I guess. Do you want to talk a little bit about what we just saw the other night? And we're gonna go pretty light on this because it's clearly part 1 of 2, and I want to. There are things that I have a lot of questions about, and I'm not sure about, but I think it's probably safe to want to reserve judgment on some things until we see the second half of the story. But first impressions, I guess, and then we'll save the real detailed. I mean, as much as details we get, more into next week. It's
really hard to even put up impressions on this episode because I feel like it asks a lot of questions that we don't have answers for. But I think
exactly
it's tough in a part 1. I like the planet. I like that we get there and it's not what we expect.
Yes.
I like that it's not it's not an easy answer. It's not okay, this is gonna be fine. This is it's not gonna be okay. They're backed into a corner. Like I feel like there was a sense of everything's gonna be okay, everything's falling into line, all these things are coming to falling. The puzzle pieces are falling where they should.
Right
now, I don't know. It's a little bit. I wouldn't say it's a 180, but it's a 90 degree. Right, we're turning a little bit. So, but there's the set design, the costume design, everything. I loved. It's good to see Brent Spiner's back. I'm trying to figure out the positives.
Yeah. No, I mean it's I loved I like the scope of it, like the opening of it. They get to the planet, these huge orchid things, literally pull them out of the sky down to the planet. Crash them, including the Borg cube. And then I love the imagery of the crew kind of like walking through this desert to the Borg cube that's downed on the planet. That imagery is really kind of cool. That's stuff that old school Trek could just never really done justice with. There's some really cool stuff there. You get the full Voyager theme when Seven shows up for the first time, which is really neat. Yes, that's really cool. You get little hints of the first couple times you see her in the other two episodes, but this one it's
there.
In
it's in your face.
The Voyager.
Yeah.
And seeing her come into frame and kicking Romulan corpses like out of the way is really kind of it's badass. I like it a lot. Yeah. I'm kind of comforted by the some people are calling it, I've seen like on Trek BBS, which I still go to every once in a while. It's been around forever, an old message board for Star Trek stuff. People like complaining and hitting the episode for being like almost too it's too much of a TNG trope. Like, here's this, we get to this planet and there's this colony, like very, very in line with stuff TNG's done before. And to me, that's almost kind of like comforting. Like, I was watching it thinking, man, this is so TNG. There's this colony here that is just
that they don't want to leave, they don't want to leave. Yeah,
Picard's trying to figure out a way to manage this. And, so I guess one person's treasure is another person's trash, I guess, applies. Some people don't want to revisit those old tropes, and for me, it's kind of a comfort almost. I have questions about, I go back and forth on this, like the idea of yet another Soong character. On one hand, like, we know so little. I mean, what do we really know about Noonien Soong? Like, he was seen in one episode as an old man. He's kind of a man of mystery throughout the show. Like, there's a lot we don't know about him, so I guess anything's possible. But it is kind of a tall ask. It leads to a lot of questions, and I think maybe there's more to come. A lot of people are speculating, is he real? Is it now that they're kind of playing with?
That was my first thought. Is this guy, check his pulse? Is this guy actually? But I think. Go.
And no, I'm sorry. I was just getting like that, and the other thing that kind of like felt to me, kind of wondering if he's an actual person or another synthetic, is how quickly, obviously, the synthetics are, assuming maybe he is real. He's been there the whole time. He's a father figure, whatever he is. I don't know. But they kind of, I don't know. He's taken for granted. Like, they're not worried about him, and he's so in line with, we're gonna let these synthetic life forms come and eradicate organic life. Like the way that he kind of gets in line with that, the other synthetics embrace him, leads one to think, what he is. But I don't know. There are a lot of unanswered questions. I have a lot of questions about who like, what is this? What is the this other life force that's out there that's monitoring organic life and waiting to be asked to come?
Dominion-esque, just waiting on the edge of the galaxy,
Where are they? Where do they come from? Are they? There's a lot of stuff that's just not answered yet. That I think maybe we'll get some clarity on in part 2, which is
I think with this episode, I'm a little bit frustrated, which I think maybe we're supposed to be frustrated, because I think Picard is a little bit frustrated with this. I travel all this way and do all these things to get to where I'm supposed to be, and I can't do, I can't do it. So I think there's there's a little bit of frustration there for me. So.
Yeah, I just think there's a lot of.
Ian makes a great point.
For a show that's so serialized.
Trek is. Go ahead.
No, for a show that's so serialized, then we're obviously every card, and even Discovery before it would like end with more questions than you had before the last one started. But I think this is part 1 of 2, so clearly this is even more so. This is designed as a part 1 of part 2 story. So this is not.
Yeah, you're right. I should reserve judgment or reserve before we see the full scope.
And as our friend, but at the same time, your struggle to kind of square it in your head and look at it as an individual thing. In Jim Morehouse's review for Trek Core, one of the first things he says is it's hard to look at this episode, but it still does have to stand on its own to some extent. Like, you do have to look at it as an independent thing.
Yeah.
On some basic level. So it's a tough rope to walk. So I'm kind of content to just talk basics.
Yeah.
There are things to talk about. There are clearly things to talk about. This episode introduces that are interesting and meaty to chew on. But I'm hesitant to pass judgment on really anything until we see what part 2 does and how it handles things, and how some things we might be thinking now are actually as they appear at this point. Ian brings up some interesting theories that people are talking about. The old ones from TOS, that's what our little girl's made of.
Yeah.
And to me, like, I think some people have been like really like this mind transfer from organics to synthetic life. Like that's as old as Star Trek is, and what our little girl's made of. That's what Dr. Corby's doing on that planet. He's creating androids and dumping human intelligence and personality into. Yeah. The idea is to make people immortal by transferring them from organic life to these synthetic creations. So that's, you're talking like episode 7 of TOS talking about this. And then the Schizoid Man in TNG, which is not a huge favorite of mine. You have Dr. Graves, who does that exact thing. He dies.
Didn't you just watch that episode?
He dumps himself into Data. Yeah, I watched it a couple months ago, season 2. Yeah. So, but yeah, pretty recent in my rewatch. The pace I'm going. But yeah, it's that's an old idea that actually Star Trek's done before. Scientists have in Star Trek have accomplished that mission in the past. But it's always been portrayed as very difficult and very kind of like fringe work. So it's not mainstream by any means. You almost get the impression that like Dr. Corby's work is kind of like classified and shut away when Kirk and company find it. And same for Dr. Graves. These are not mainstream scientific efforts.
Ian asks an interesting question. Are they outside the barrier of the edge of the galaxy? I think that are they not here? Like with the other synthetic beings? I think it would be cool to have like a dragon's teeth-esque thing, like an awakening, maybe. I don't know.
That or something like that. Somebody who's kind of laid dormant, being woken up, or like you're saying, Ian, maybe somebody from the Kelvans, from by any other name. That's what you just kind of rewatched from the Andromeda Galaxy, who otherwise would not be easy to contact. So I think I suspect we may get some more clarity next week, or maybe not. Who knows? But I'm. They're all questions that aren't necessarily fair to knock for not having an answer to yet, because we still have another episode to go, and we're in a part 1 of 2 kind of situation.
They're also talking about the. Is there going to be a big battle? Because is there going to be a fleet at Deep Space 12 that's going to come? Because obviously the Romulans, they're bringing in some heavy, which is also cool to see a big Romulan fleet.
I fully expect.
Just Riker standing on the bridge of the flagship.
Yeah. I'm hoping maybe the Titan finally makes an appearance.
Lord of the Rings.
The 2 towers at Helm's Deep.
Yeah.
Coming down the hill.
Yeah.
I mean, I basically, that's a safe assumption. I think. I would not be surprised at all to see something along those lines. I think 7 of 9's efforts on the Borg cube will come to fruition as well. I think that Borg will ascend again.
I think it's still, they're still repairing it right now, even though they crashed.
Yeah,
it's regenerating right now. So I think
it's regenerating.
That's gonna come up.
XPs are hard at work.
Yeah.
Yep, I think. Yeah. In the trailer for next week, Orchids are up there. Yeah. So I think we're gonna have that. I think there's clearly going to be a battle over that planet. I think Narek, having escaped custody, is off trying to do something. Who knows what? I think Soji's going to have to try to convince the synthetics of,
not to be the destroyer,
not to do this, not to fulfill this prophecy. I like the idea of it fulfilling prophecy. I do kind of like that idea.
Yeah, because we've always seen like fulfilling a prophecy, right? And
yeah.
Whatever. So
I like the way that this dilemma is kind of boxing people in, and they're basically having to make like, well, the easy choice here is to just kind of and let it happen if you're the synthetic.
Yeah.
It's I kind of, I don't know. I find it kind of refreshing that they're not like evil doers who are out to do anything bad. They're presented with this information. They're presented with this threat, and they're kind of like, well, what else are we going to do? We can either be destroyed by these 218 Romulan ships.
Yeah.
We can call these friendlies to come take care of business for us. Like they're not. I think they're not irredeemable, and I think they can be convinced.
Yeah.
Maybe. If with the right set of circumstances, and maybe just maybe Soji, with the knowledge of Data and Picard's connection, and how safe that was, and how loving that, can impart that information to the necessary folks to find another way.
Yeah.
I suspect that's going to be the road we're going to go down. But I'm interested to see what they do. There's a lot of open-ended questions. We will definitely be talking about all of it, hopefully next week. Talking about part 2, part 1 as kind of a collective whole at some point here.
Yeah, I might have to stay up with that again and watch it the night it airs, because I'm really eager to see where this goes.
Yeah, you should. You should, especially in these times. People aren't doing anything, so
that's true.
It's a perfect time to do such a thing.
Yep.
What else did I see? I saw something in the comments I want to. Just mentioned Trek is really good at bringing back old family members. That is true. That is very, very true. Cybok, for one. And TNG's full of that stuff.
Adam is saying his marriage was secret. There's a very real chance that a kid was secret as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you can easily read these things.
Yeah, I mean,
especially, it's not like. Good.
No, I'll let you finish.
No, I was just gonna, especially given that Soong is a character we saw so little of. If this was a character that was like recurring, that wasn't already kind of a man of living a life of secrets, kind of on the fringes of society and not entirely well known, I would have a harder time. I do. It's not my favorite Star Trek. I'll call it a trope. It's not my favorite thing to pull from the bag of tricks. I wish Star Trek as a whole, it's not Picard independently, would maybe do a little less of it. But it is a trademark of Star Trek to say, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Unknown, and let alone, Michael Burnham is the ultimate at this point. Unknown member. Secretive sibling.
But I could rationalize in my head because
her daughter, Sarah.
Spock has always been such a private person.
Yes. But so is Soong. Soong is living out on the fringe.
But, okay, back to Soong. I feel like his character is such driven on this this creation, this wants to play God type of character.
Yeah. Right.
He's created a son. This is his creation. Now, I could see maybe him, baby Soong, not liking his father and having that, but I feel like he's just Soong 2.0, right? He's just followed in his dad's footsteps. So
he seems like it, which is kind of I mean, that's you can make a case that that's kind of lazy. I mean,
yeah.
I don't want to be too critical yet because we don't know. Yeah, but I do have questions and struggles with the introduction of a character like that. It's great to see Brent Spiner again, and I love the now little like cool little thing where he plays different versions of Soong and Enterprise and TNG and now Picard. Yeah. Like there's a cute little thing there that I'm down for. I like that. I love seeing Brent Spiner back. But I have the same questions you do, and that a lot of people do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything else before we wrap it up? Almost, we're kind of at that hour mark. I love the the costume design with the eyes, really Data-esque,
Yeah,
and then also with
very Data.
the skin tone as well.
Yes,
Very
yeah,
Data-esque. I love it.
yep. And that's the thing, kind of similar with like Absolute Candor when they go to the Romulan settlement. The production design, the costume design is very, very TNG. There's something comforting 90s Trek about that colony. It's certainly on a bigger scale. It's bigger, and there's more production design capabilities behind it. It feels at home in the 24th century Star Trek stuff. So I really like that.
So does this episode.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I like that. And there's I mean there's good stuff here, but there's a lot too. And I'm off on passing serious judgment on kind of how I stand with it, where exactly I would like stack it in rankings and grading and stuff like that until I see part 2.
Yeah. Agreed.
Good cat, pretty cat. There is a cat spot too.
Yep. Yes, I forgot to mention that.
I'm obsessed.
Who's synthetic.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I think we should wrap it up here around the hour mark. You guys know the drill. The discussion does not have to stop here. I know we're coming down to the end of Star Trek Picard, but that's not going to be the end of course heading. Hopefully, we will have more Star Trek content to talk about in the future in the coming months. But also, we'll definitely have some episodes after the show. We'll do some recaps and maybe some character deep dives and some episode deep dives as well. So there's going to be some more core setting content.
More Picard talk.
Yes. Yep.
Most of the Picard talk you'll find with us will be on core setting.
Yes.
Rather than Trek Live show.
Yep. So we'll be back next week with another core setting to talk about the finale of season 1. So, but we do have Trek Live, like Bill said, tomorrow.
What are we talking about?
We're talking about some uniforms, which should be a really fun episode. I think it's a Guess Each Other's. I think
it's a Guess Each Other.
Yeah, a little bit spin on it of our top-ish. I think we haven't really talked about top 5 uniforms, so it should be fun. We got some future topics that should be fun as well. So
yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yep.
Who doesn't love Star Trek uniform talk?
Yeah. Again, discussion does not have to stop here. Discord, I think, and Twitter are the two big things where we keep it going. We'll see you guys tomorrow for some Trek Live action.
Yeah. Be safe, everybody.